So the original idea for the film was Dominic's. He wanted to create this fun, independent, small film about three young boys who encounter this mysterious woman who happens to be a Yakshi. Since we were recasting the Yakshi as a superhero, I felt that it was important to give that character agency. And that's how we made the choice of rewriting the equation between Kathanar and Neeli, to present a character who could actually go into action any second. So we're not presenting an ultra-feminine version of the Yakshi, but somebody who's dressed very practically for the things that she does. Even for like characters which have very little screen time, I think there are fan theories that are building entire narratives around them. And that's really a sign of the film becoming more than what we had planned for. And it's after the release, after a few days, I think we had this conversation where we realized that it's not even our film anymore. It's just taken a life of its own.
Indicative of a market and a film viewership culture that's willing to give returns if there are people who place enough trust on stories led by women.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll quote Kalyani. She mentioned in an interview that, she feels that we've been underestimating the audience and that we must not. This idea that women-led films are heavy-handed with their messaging or are, not fun, that myth has been also broken a little bit, I think. I mean, because as women, I think we do have a lot of fun in our lives.
Myth, magic, superheroes. These are the new favorite buzzwords of Malayalam film buffs. Kalyani Priyadarshan's Loka, Chapter 1, Chandra, has opened up a new world of legends rooted in Kerala folklore. Today we have with us one of the bright minds behind the creation of this world. We have Shanti Balachandran. She's the dramaturg and the co-writer of the film. Hi Shanti.
Hi Sukanya, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. So Loka is this huge success. It's become this huge wave, not just in Kerala but pan-India and also among global audiences. And it's very rarely that we get to see a writer get so much limelight as well. So how has it been?
It's been truly overwhelming. As someone who's had a career in films before Loka happened, this is completely new to me because none of the films I've done have achieved the level of commercial success that Loka has. So I'm the sort of person who's used to having a film or a series release and then there's excitement leading up to it. And then after that, I'm okay with like putting it behind. So the journey that we've been on since the release of Loka has been completely new and I'm still wrapping my brain around it. Still figuring out how to navigate this attention that's come my way, which has been completely unexpected. Just thrilled that I get to share this with the wonderful team behind Loka because we've had this journey that's spanned 5 years and we've become, it's a cliche, but we've become a family over that period of time. And to see the appreciation that each person in the team has been receiving has been very heartening.
You're also a person who wears many hats. As a child, you were into painting, you've been a writer, you've dabbled in theatre, you've also been an actor. So tell me a little bit about your creative journey.
I'm very lucky to have been brought up by parents who really encouraged my creative pursuits. So both my parents worked 9-to-5 jobs, were in finance, both of them were bankers. And but both of them also had a side to themselves that they didn't really get to explore. My dad really loves to write. My mom, she really enjoys reading. So they've always had that creative side to them as well, but they've not really had the chance to explore it in their life. So I think when it came to me, they really wanted me to have the opportunity to do that. So as a child, I used to spend a lot of time at Kerala Kalapeedam, which was run by Kaladharan Mash. And it was a very creative space for a child to experience. I started going there when I was 5 years old. And it was a space where there were these senior artists like Devan Mash, Jairam Mash, and they would come there and they would be painting or working on sculpting something. And the children, those of us who attended Kalapeedam, we were also just given the space to do whatever we wanted. So some days we would be playing with clay, some days we would be working with papier-mâché, some days we would be drawing and sketching. So it was a very wholesome environment, I feel, that I got exposed to as a child. And that interest in expressing myself creatively, I think, took root there. And since then, all through my life, even during the phase when I was really into academics, I still enjoyed my creative explorations as well. So that's how I got into writing and theater. And sometimes when you do these things, it can get overwhelming because you're juggling a lot of things at the same time. But the energy it gives is also very exciting, and it's been very fulfilling to be able to do both these things alongside.
Coming to Loka, we've seen many iterations of the Yakshi myth in literature, Malayalam literature, as well as in screen adaptations. There was a Kalyangata Neeli, a black and white Kalyangata Neeli, and then there was a Katanar, and then there was Malayatu Ramakrishnan's Yakshi that has been adapted and readapted again. Then there's the tragic Yakshi, Neela Velicham. So the seductive Yakshi, the murderous Yakshi, the tragic Yakshi. You decided to give it a spin and make her the protector Yakshi, the superhero Yakshi. So how did the thought begin?
So the original idea for the film was Dominic's. He wanted to create this fun, independent, small film about three young boys who encounter this mysterious woman who happens to be a Yakshi. And that idea excited all of us who came on board as collaborators. And I think that moment when he connected this idea of a vampire to our local equivalent, which is the Yakshi, was really exciting for all of us. And I'm somebody who has grown up reading these novels and Aidihya and over time with my academic background, I was exposed to different readings of these myths and how the Aidihya is not canon and how it is based on a lot of folklore that came before that, like oral traditions, which actually subvert the idea of the Yakshi as seen in popular culture. So we are familiar with the Yakshi as the malevolent, bloodthirsty, vengeful spirit. But there have also been readings within academia which look at how the Yakshi is a subversive figure that, stays somewhere between prey and predator, and how the Yakshi is also an anti-caste figure. So exposure to those ideas also helped me kind of relook at the myths that we were going to bring into the film. And when I suggested to Dominic that we tweak the original story, we had several debates back and forth because obviously this is a story that Malayalis are very, very familiar with. So it is like messing around with something that is considered almost sacred, right? So there was a back and forth about whether we should do that. But since we were recasting the Yakshi as a superhero, I felt that it was important to give that character agency. And that's how we made the choice of writing the equation between Katanar and Neeli.
Okay. So, like you said, women generally, or specifically Yakshis, are always put in this or that boxes. They're either the saint or the sinner. They're either the good woman or the vamp. So there is that dichotomy always. So what were the tropes that you took care not to play into while creating Chandra?
I'll have to think about that a little bit. Because as a dramaturg, I think that's a good point you made, because it's not just about what's in the film, it's also about what you're avoiding. And I think we were, as a team, pretty much on the same page in terms of how we would represent this character. An iconic character, but bringing it into the urban world, a contemporary version of the Yakshi. So in terms of styling and everything, we were very clear about the look that we wanted. And Dominic had the idea of this goth-inspired look from the beginning, from when he pitched the story. And initially at that point, it was supposed to be a short-haired Yakshi. But then when Kalyani came on board, she was like, can we still retain the look with the long hair? And it worked for the character with the red streaks and everything. So in terms of the look and the styling itself, it was important to, for us to present a character who could actually go into action any second. So we're not presenting an ultra feminine version of the Yakshi, but somebody who's dressed very practically for the things that she does. I think the whole team was on the same page with regard to that. And even in terms of the action, it was not about sort of showcasing her in a way that would objectify the character, but in terms of just showing the sheer strength that a seemingly fragile woman can carry. So yeah, these were intentional choices that we made.
What's been interesting post-release is also the number of fan theories around Chandra. And it looks like viewers have cracked into some of the mysteries hidden. They've been figuring out Easter eggs. They've been decoding the title credit animation and trying to figure out what this world is all about. So I wanted to ask you, that also gives rise to a lot of criticisms, but we'll get into that in a bit. I want to ask you, are there any theories or any interpretations that you find amusing?
Um, yeah, many actually. So recently, there's been a reel doing the rounds that kind of blew our minds, which is from Indriyam, the film where Nishant Sagar plays this character called Sunny, and he's the one who kind of lets the Yakshi loose. We had not made that connection, and then when people send us this, we're like, "Oh my God, how do these things connect?" It's just really great the way people have embraced the film and made it their own. They're coming up with their own narratives. And it's really interesting, some of the theories that have come up, even for like characters which have very little screen time. I think there are fan theories that are building entire narratives around them. And that's really a sign of the film becoming more than what we had planned for. And it's after the release, after a few days, I think we had this conversation where we realized that it's not even our film anymore. It's just taken a life of its own, which is exciting. Yeah, I'm just curious to see where this leads now.
Speaking about Chandra, like you said, on screen she's athleisure clad, very practical, and there's no dwelling. Though she's styled very well with intent, there's no dwelling on her body. There's no objectification. So there is this sense of reclaiming her agency. Like you said, tweaking the Yakshi myth to give her some agency. But there are several film critics who've also read it in the context of how she operates for another male, seeming male master in the film as well. So, how do you engage with these post release readings of the films, especially with respect to the gender aspect and all of that?
I think I'm really excited to see these readings as well, because obviously we have a larger mythology in place for the remaining four parts of the franchise. And we have a narrative in place, but obviously there is still room for making it better. And I'm like excited when people engage with it critically and maybe like address blind spots that we've had. And just to be clear, there are more female characters coming on board in the next few films. It's not that, Chandra is the only a woman character with supernatural powers. There will be more characters which are introduced. So I think we will manage to strike that balance. It's definitely something that I'm keen to do. But yeah, all criticisms are welcome. And I do see where that comment is coming from. Yeah.
Right. Speaking about this franchise, so it looks like this is the first installment to a bigger franchise with more characters and more superheroes on board. So, starting this franchise with a woman-led installment, which is Chandra, it's something that's largely considered a box office risk. So, initially, did you think that Chandra would do the numbers that it did now?
We had no way of anticipating the success Lucas had, but I think Dominic just wanted to basically make a film that he would want to watch. And we were all very convinced by his vision. And he's been very patient. I mean, it's been an 8-year journey for him since Tarangam released. And it's not an easy film to pitch and to get investors on board because, like you said, the conventional wisdom is that a woman led film will not get bums on the seat, right? So. It was a risky proposition, but we were lucky to get Dulquer and Wayfarer on board. Dulquer really understood the larger potential this universe holds, and he was really excited about it and encouraged us to kind of go back to the drawing board and develop the next few parts. Have clarity on where this is going properly before we start filming the first one. Yeah, so basically there was no way of predicting the figures that the film would do. But I think all of us were excited about Dominic's vision. Dulquer was really excited by the potential that he saw for the franchise, and he decided to back this film. And we could have maybe started with a male superhero as well, but this was the original idea. It was meant to be a standalone film, and then it became a franchise. And I think everyone was really okay with the idea of starting with this film. And I think also the idea is that this is the film that introduces the audience to the larger world. So it needed the level of grounding as well. And that happens through the characters of the boys. And that's how the audience connects to this world first. And of course, after a point, they start traveling ahead of the boys and they've already figured out things that they haven't. That also adds to the humor. So there is it is a world that we're not familiar with, but it starts off through a world that we do live in. And I think that balance really helped us to convince the audience and make the film feel more credible, or the reality in which it is set feel more credible.
The financial success of this film is something that we now know in hindsight. So, do you think that this is a standalone success, or looking at it as a writer, do you feel that this is also indicative of a market and a film viewership culture that's willing to give returns if there are people who place enough trust on stories led by women?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll quote Kalyani. She mentioned in an interview that she feels that we've been underestimating the audience and that we must not. And I think the success of Loka is down to just the generosity with which the audience has accepted the film, and that's because I think we somehow cracked a script which felt accessible yet aspirational in some way. It is a fantasy. It is a magical world that the audience is being led to, but it's also rooted in contemporary reality. And like I said, those characters of the boys are characters that the audience find very relatable. And the way it is written somehow, I think, managed to strike the balance between the ordinary and the extraordinary, I think. And yeah, like the numbers have really been overwhelming for us as well, because we are like, what is happening? Is this really our film that people are talking about? So we are still coming to terms with it. But if that means that more makers will feel like there is room for their original vision, that they can push the boundaries a little bit more, that's a great outcome. And if it means that more investors will be willing to back films which are led by women, that's also a great outcome. So we couldn't have planned that, but the way it's panned out has been really I don't know, inspiring on a lot of levels. I think it gives a lot of people the courage to stay true to their conviction, at least from the sort of messages that I've been receiving, especially from women who are interested in working in cinema. I've had a lot of lovely messages from aspiring writers and filmmakers who happen to be women, who have written in saying that, we feel like this is a personal win, because this means that, there is room for stories, a variety of stories. And this idea that women-led films are heavy handed with their messaging, or are not fun, that myth has been also broken a little bit, I think. I mean, because as women, I think we do have a lot of fun in our lives, right? I mean, we're not all like sad and depressed all the time. I mean, of course there's room for those stories as well that showcase the difficulties of leading our life in this world as a woman, but we also have a good time being women. And I think there's scope for entertainers which are led by women.
So, what you're saying is also something I feel that does not happen in a vacuum. It looks like Malayalam cinema is also at the cusp of a reckoning with the Hema Committee report, with the film policy conclave that has happened. There is conversation about regularizing the work environment, about workplace parity, dignity. There is the presence of an organization like the Women in Cinema Collective. So, there are a lot of factors that have also put gender at the forefront, put parity and dignity for all stakeholders at the forefront. All these conversations have been happening. And so how do you look at these changes coming together? How do you look at it?
I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that these conversations are important, because they, influence the zeitgeist, right? But like, it's important to ask the right questions and not hold back. I think that's really important. And that's been happening in our industry and across the world. And it's also a sign of a generational shift, I think, with understanding of gender politics. And not just in terms of theory, but in terms of how we interact with each other in work environments. On the sets of Loka, for example, there were a lot of women working behind the scene, and there was a level of camaraderie which was really like natural and did not feel forced in any way. It was not sort of a tokenistic sort of approach to include more women in the production or the creative teams. It just happened organically, and the great thing was that all the HODs did not think twice about including women, because there have been cases in the past, especially where I've been on sets where I've heard things like, "Oh, let's not add too many women in the crew, because then we'll have to give them separate accommodation, and we'll have to provide for more facilities. But that was not the attitude on the set at all. I think people just worked happily together, and if ever there were any issues, they were sorted out quickly. So I do feel that it's important to ask the right questions, but it's also important to acknowledge the efforts of people who have stepped up and taken that forward with practical action. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you a little bit about the villain, Nachiappa, the police character. Usually, superheroes have cops as their allies. And very, very, it's very rare to see superheroes go up against the police force. So, how did that thought come about? How did you is that because Chandra is a woman? Like, what is the natural progression of that thought?
So the idea of that Nachiappa would be a police officer came from Dominic. He was talking about how we have an instinctive fear when a policeman approaches, and he wanted to explore that and to see how a person who is in the role of a protector becomes a villain, and that was the thought behind casting Nachiappa as a police officer. And in that context, I felt that there was space to kind of analyze how power works and how our choices work in terms of deciding who we are. So with Nachiappa, the introductory scene where we first meet him, it's at the crossroads, and that is typically a space that a Yakshi inhabits. Neither here nor there. And the crossroad is also a space of potential. It's where you take decisions, which way to go, right? And we see later that, once he gains those powers, the choices he makes, that's what makes him the villain. Whereas the same thing happens essentially to Chandra as a child. She gets she gets infected by the same virus, but the choices she makes are different because that's the environment she has grown up in. She's grown up in a tribal community, connected to nature, in a loving environment, and she's been given a code by her mother, and that's what teaches her that she needs to use the powers that she's been given for good. Whereas Nachiappa, in a similar situation, goes the other way. So yeah, it's been interesting because even in terms of the characters, the female characters who are part of Nachiappa's life, we've been intentional about writing them. So that's why Nachiappa's mother doesn't have a single line in the film, because that's the household that he has grown up in. He's been part of a toxic, misogynistic, kind of setup where he idolizes his father, who has taught him things like fear is the root of respect, and his mother is essentially like cowed down by fear. On the other hand, his superior officer is a woman, and she's also subscribed to these ideas of masculinity. She berates him for not being man enough. So both of them are examples of women that we see in our lives, right? Because women can also be torchbearers of the patriarchy. So I think it was important to characterize these characters in that way so that you could see why Nachiappa becomes who he is. So even though we don't show Nachiappa as much as maybe typically expected in a superhero film, like he's not a supervillain yet, but to showcase the influences in the scenes that we did have him in was important.
What are some of your favorite comics?
Favorite comics? Oh, actually, I'm not really a comic fan, but I can tell you my favorite superhero film. It's Black Panther, and I really thought that was a smartly written film because it also has an element of alternate history, and it's talking about Wakanda as a region that saved itself from colonialism, and like that's so. What would have happened to the African nations if they had not been colonized? That's the route that the story takes, and that was done so convincingly. I mean, it's a popular commercial entertainer, but it also had things to say about the reality we live in, and that was woven in a very organic way, and that was inspiring for sure.
You spoke about how Loka was a set where there were a lot of women. You have also, like you said, worked in films where there are film sets that are populated more by male members, etc. So what is one difference that you would have noticed when there are more women on set?
So I think the Loka set reflected reality for me a little bit more than a set that's full of men, because I think in my normal life I have female friends, I have male friends, and there's like a balance in the communities around me. And that was the experience on the Loka set. Whereas usually if you go on a set, it's mostly men. And of course, that's changing as well. But it reflected my life experience a little bit more, I think, the set on Loka. Yeah.
So, at the beginning of this conversation, you spoke about how you've not tasted success like this before. So, this success has found you maybe 7 or 8 years into your career in films, but you have been the same person with the same talents and the same aspirations. So, I want to also know how you have sort of uh, how you've sort of gone through the times when things were not working out, where you need a lot of people's conviction to be there in you, a lot of people to put trust in you and believe in your capabilities. And I believe being a woman, that may have been doubly difficult to be taken seriously. So how has that journey been for you internally as an actor, as a creative?
So it's not been easy. There have been like real ups and downs through the journey. There have been films and projects which I've been very invested in emotionally, which I thought would do really well, which did not. And then you have to deal with the disappointment and, figure out plan B and all of that. So number one's definitely privilege, because I come from a family that's always supported me in my creative endeavors. And it was not easy on them to watch me give up a PhD in Oxford, because I think when you're doing a PhD at a prestigious university, people don't hound your parents as much about where your life is going. But when you take a decision like this, then, they face a lot of questions and criticism, which they really did shield me from. In any debates and discussions we had over my choice were within the house. In whatever the rest of, our circle was talking about, it didn't really come to me. So I'm really lucky that way, because given also that I've done very few films in this span of time, financially also, it was not an easy thing to do. And I was able to survive and continue on this journey only because I had a roof over my head and food on the table, thanks to my parents. So that's definitely one. Number two, I also feel that there have been moments peppered throughout these 8 years that have reminded me why I'm doing what I'm doing. So just when you feel like, oh, this is just too hard and things are just not working out, there would come a moment that would inspire me. For example, the film Ennanum, we had a similar journey of ups and downs. Ennanum, directed by Shalini Usha Devi. I mean, she won the state award for, best film by a female director last year. And our film also won at international awards. But the journey towards creating that film was very difficult, and she really had to put her own money behind her story and idea, and she funded it herself. And that was really inspiring, the way she backed herself. Um, and all those moments of wins that came for her really, energized me as well. And there are also these moments that happen on set when you're doing a scene, like it might be like 2 or 3 seconds, and you feel that you've done something new, and that excites you, and you're like, oh, I want to do this again, and that sustains you in a way. It's almost, I mean, I think trying to make it in the movies is almost like gambling, I feel, because you always think that the next one is it, and you will, it's going to hit jackpot, but it may not, and then you just keep buying the lottery tickets. So I think there's an element of that here. It's addictive in a way.
Right. You've also recently mentioned about how invested you've been in the songs, working with the lyricists, creating the world of Loka through the songs. So you've also interestingly used the word anthem. So what were your thoughts when you were writing that concept note for the song?
So Dominic told me, I mean, this is actually just sometime towards the end of July, and the movie came out a month later. And he said, oh, we have to come up with a promo song. Jake's is going to do the music, and he's going to bring in Mohsin to write the lyrics. And he said, can you come up with an idea for it? And I said, yeah. So he thought I would send him like a paragraph, as I usually do, which is what I've done for like the title animation and stuff. But this time, because it was meant to be a promo song and it's the first thing that you're going to see from the film, I just felt very excited, and I started writing, and then the words just started flowing, and it ended up being a 3 or 4 page document. And then when I sent it to Dominic, he was like, what is this? I just asked for like a paragraph. I was like, no, but I just wanted to flesh out the idea. And, this has the potential to be an anthem. It can talk about different things that, an anthem for the ages. And the way it's written, it's talking about how women have been represented and how women can break out of the binaries that they are boxed in. But when Mawson came into the picture, we had like discussions over like certain words and all of that. And it was interesting how he made it more expansive and like a call to like the feminine spirit that could be addressed not just to women but also to anybody who's interested in like getting a push of inspiration. And then when it came to the rap portions, Jake suggested a few names and we all agreed on Rebel, who's an upcoming rapper from Meghalaya. And she gave the concept her own spin and actually used Not Your Goddess in one of the lines. So it's interesting, because this idea of pedestalization is what I wanted to explore there. And Mawson's were, the title is Tani Logo Murakari, someone who writes her own rules, so you can't box them in. So I think that journey was also quite exciting to see. And it was very quick. I mean, because I think we released it maybe 2.5 weeks after we started the process. So even the shoot was exciting. Watching Jyoti perform live was stupendous. Her voice carries so much power. And it was really exciting because that was not something that I had really thought would be part of something I would do ever, because I'm not very musically inclined. So yeah, this was an unexpected outcome that I really, really enjoyed.
So I heard Dominic say in one of his recent interviews that now he's invested in the universe and now he's going to be working on the next installments to the franchise. And then there's this huge success as well. When you started off, you did not have a reference points. You went all out and you made this film. So now, looking at the next installments, does the success scare you? That's one thing I wanted to ask you. Another thing that I want to ask you is about these pointers that some people read this. Some people say that this is communal. There are people who have been offended by the representation of certain communities, about the location and the context of the film. Then there are people who've read it with a feminist lens. There are people who have problems with it. So do you also think when you step into the next process of writing the next installments, these things would in any way sort of censor you or sort of, bother you? Do you think that you would have this constant feeling that you will have to write for an audience that's already anticipating certain things and has disliked certain things?
So I think one of the reasons this film worked is because we were just trying to tell a story as honestly as possible. And we all believed in Dominic's vision for the film. And I think that's what we should do again. Um, I mean, the success is very welcome. Of course, we are very happy about it. But if we start tailoring the material according to what we think will work, we're going to fall into a trap. So this was not tailored according to what we think would work. This was just the story we wanted to tell. And I think it's important to go back to the basics and do exactly that. We have a narrative in place, but the screenplay is yet to be written for part 2. And when we go back to the drawing board, I think it's important to shield ourselves and shut out the noise and just focus on the story we want to tell. Because once you start designing it according to a formula you think worked first, it may not work the second time. I really think there was some sort of magical alchemy that worked on this project, which we may not be able to replicate even. So the important thing is to have fun doing what we set out to do and to create a script. I mean, there was this quote, I don't remember who it was by, but it said a script is like an invitation to collaborate. And that's exactly what Chandra was. And I hope that part 2 will be the same, because unless we get exciting talent on board to create and execute this film, it's not going to work for anybody. So the point is to, have fun doing it. So yeah, for sure, the success is great and it can be intimidating. But I think at some point we do need to stop celebrating what has happened and go back to creating.
Right. You've also spoken a lot about allyship, about how this film is a lot about allyship. So do you think that when powerful men with capital, put their trust in the capabilities of women, like not just Dulquer Salmaan producing the film, but also there are cameos of heavy stars like Tovino Thomas, who have very little screen space, so to say, but they've all come together. So how do you think that frees a woman to sort of, express herself?
Yeah, I mean, I think none of this would be possible without these examples of allyship we've had in this project. For Dominic to make this film after the first film that he made did not succeed, to go with a risky proposition, which is a woman-led film, right, in our industry or in any Indian industry, I think, that Nasrin coming on board, even though he was not the main protagonist, Dulquer deciding to back it, all of these things led us to this point. And without them, this success would not happen, because at the end of the day, it's still a commercial film. It's made for a commercial audience. So it has to have elements that appeal to the audience. And I think Dominic understands the pulse of the audience in a way that's very different from the way I understand it. I think I'm someone who probably has lived in a bubble, whether it's in my university environment or even prior to that. So and like also having grown up a lot outside Kerala, my influences are completely different. Whereas he understands the humor, he understands the pop culture references, all of that a lot more deeply than I do. And this collaborative effort is what has led to this moment. And yes, like when you have people with, social and financial capital backing you, it does make a difference, because the fact that Dulquer Salman is presenting a film makes a difference. The fact that it generated interest in Tamil Nadu and the Telugu states, initially it's because of the name. So I think this is an example of how, realistically the genders can work together to push the narrative forward.
Right. When it comes to this whole genre of superhero films, it is something that's also done a lot. It's done and overdone. And there's very little that you can sort of alter or change around with. How did you decide between, the thin line where inspiration ends and replication begins? So there is a lot of people have been saying, oh, this character has the texture of this other character from the West, or, from a Marvel series or from a DC series. So how do you look at those comments now? And while you were creating the characters, how did you decide where to stop?
So I think that's very valid, because a superhero film comes with its own tropes. So does a vampire film. There are elements which will be familiar to the audience. And essentially, I mean, like they say, there are very few original stories in the world. It's mostly in the presentation or execution that a story becomes fresh. And that's exactly what we've attempted here. We have a homegrown superhero now because we've connected the superhero and vampire tropes with a folk tale. So I think there is a balance that was struck there, which we worked out over the course of the 5 years that we sat with the script. A lot of it just happened organically. But yeah, the setting really helped us present it in a novel way, because it's a contemporary modern Yakshi. And yeah, I think even in terms of the visual treatment, there are the scale, there are elements that people are familiar with, like with the action set piece. There are certain things that you expect from a superhero film when you go in to watch it. And those elements, I think, can be used strategically by a filmmaker to still deliver a fresh experience. And somewhere I feel like people have embraced it because they felt that sort of cultural resonance with an iconic character like Neeli. And at some point, I think as makers, as a creative team, we had lost sight of the fact that Neeli means so much to our audience, because she became Chandra to us, like that part of the story is part of our history, but we were not thinking about it actively after a point. And I think that sort of added a certain magic, and that's why people have loved the film and have us celebrating so much. Also, maybe the Onam season, it's become a celebratory event to go to the cinemas with your family and friends and watch this theatrical, experience, because it is designed as a theatrical experience as well. So I think a lot of factors have come in to make it work, none of which we could have planned, yeah.
Also, I have this one question about two characters from the film that a lot of people messaged me to ask you about. One is, what can you tell us about Muton? What can you tell us about Ishtar?
I can't tell you anything about either of them, but the upcoming films will feature more of these characters for sure.
So before we wrap up, you've also found simultaneous success as an actor with Krishan's Nalada Sangam releasing. So you've been in the limelight. You have to go back to the drawing board, like you said, for Loka. What lies ahead?
I have a few releases coming up. So these are all projects that I did over the last couple of years. I mean, I've had to wait as usual for them to release. So there's Krishan's Mastishka Marnam, which is coming out later this year. It's a very exciting project. I mean, it's a very different world compared to the one that's just released now. It's set in a sort of dystopian future, and the characters are really, really fun. So it was interesting to work with the same maker, but in a different setting altogether. And I really enjoy the way Krishan's brain works. So it's always fun being around him. And then there's Anandam Gada, which is a socio-political drama scripted by Murli Gopi and directed by G.N. Krishna Kumar. And it stars the Tamil actor Arya. It's a bilingual film, so it's in the final stages of post-production now, so should release in the next month or so. Also worked on a couple of indie projects. So I've done like cameos mostly in films that are headlined by friends. So there's Don Palatra's film in which I played a role. Then there's Kamal KM and Sudha Padmaja's film, which is again that's headlined by Divya Prabha. So yeah, I've been part of these interesting films, which I'm just waiting eagerly to watch. And yeah, I'm going to be working on a Tamil film soon. Yeah.
Right. So thank you, Shanti.
Thank you so
for
much,
speaking
Sukanya.
to us.
Thank you. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
speaking to you.
Thank you. Same
you.
here. To our viewers watching, the News Minute is a completely ad-free platform that is powered only by you, our readers. We're accountable only to you, our readers. So do keep supporting our work. Subscribe to the News Minute. You can also scan the QR code on the screen to subscribe or to contribute to any of our reporting funds. Thank you.